Hey everybody and welcome. My name is Mike and today we're looking at the terrifying case of the serial killer known as the West Mesa Bone Collector. I mean, this case wins on name alone. That's really top drawer stuff right there. In February 2009, a woman walking her dog in West Mesa, an elevated landmass in Albuquerque, New Mexico, made a horrifying discovery embedded in the dirt: a human bone. Upon police arrival, the bone would reveal a mass grave spread out across the mesa containing 11 bodies. All 11 bodies were female. The women were believed to have been killed by a serial killer known as the West Mesa Bone Collector, and he has still never been caught. After the bodies were discovered, it was eventually revealed that between 2001 and 2005, a serial killer known as the West Mesa Bone Collector murdered and buried 11 women in the outskirts of Albuquerque. It goes without saying that it's the most horrific case Albuquerque and probably New Mexico has ever seen. Police promised the families of the victims that solving the murders was a top priority. And initially that seemed to be the case. Investigators assembled a crack team of detectives, bringing in FBI profilers and working with law enforcement agencies around the state to try to figure out how the bones of 11 women had wound up in the desert, how they died, and who was responsible. All of the West Mesa Bone Collector's victims fall between the ages of 15 and 32, were Hispanic, and were suspected to be involved in the Albuquerque drug scene, and worked as prostitutes. The bodies of 11 women and one unborn child were found not in a single mass grave, but rather they were found scattered under dry sand, hot sun, and tumbleweeds. It took law enforcement officials quite some time to recover all of the bodies. Then they started the process of identifying each of them, quickly coming to realize that many of them had been missing for years. By the end of their investigation, the bodies of 11 women had been identified. Officially, the cause of death of the 11 women was homicidal violence. But in truth, the medical examiners and forensic experts, they couldn't actually figure out how the women died, which is very unusual. No witnesses have come forward, and there was virtually no forensic evidence at the burial site, which meant there was nothing to tie the victims together, except their shared grave and high-risk lifestyles.
APD still won't call the West Mesa murders a cold case, but they say they also won't name any suspects involved, and they actually have a bigger pool of people they're looking at than ever before.
To this day, law enforcement officials have been unable to determine who is the West Mesa Bone Collector. But things take an unusual turn when we look at the potential list of suspects. Lorenzo Montoya had a rather suspicious criminal background. He not only lived near the burial site, but he was arrested in 1999 for attempting to strangle a prostitute that he'd picked up and taken to a secluded area. In 2006, Montoya died after the boyfriend of Sherrick Hill, another prostitute, murdered him. Montoya had hired Hill and then tied her up and strangled her. But when she didn't emerge from Montoya's home at the time she said she would, her boyfriend, whom she'd brought with her, approached the house and killed Montoya in self-defense. Suspiciously, the West Mesa murders, they stopped after Montoya was killed, leading police to believe that he may have been the serial killer after all. Another suspect is Joseph Blee. Joseph Blee's wife suspected he may have been the West Mesa Bone Collector. First, there was a large collection of jewelry found in their home that didn't belong to either her or her daughter. And then a stash of women's underwear was found in their backyard shed. Blee had already been on law enforcement's radar thanks to his habit of stalking prostitutes. Plus, he had also been arrested for exposing himself in public. When the police finally caught up with him to bring him in for questioning, they discovered electrical tape and rope in his car.
They're all gonna pay the ultimate price!
Whoa!
Oh.
Dude, what's all that stuff you're grabbing?
Tools! Duct tape, zip ties, and gloves! I have to have my tools!
In fact, after the bones were found in West Mesa, Blee's ex-wife promptly called the police to inform them that she believed her ex-husband was the killer. However, so far nothing has definitively connected him to the crimes. Blee is currently in prison, serving a 36-year sentence for raping a 13-year-old girl.
Girls in the late 1980s. Investigators say Blea wore a ski mask when he attacked victims and was usually armed with a knife.
Blea is also a suspect in a very large case that's gained national attention. As we've learned and reported last year, Blea is a suspect in the West Mesa murders.
Police have never charged him or anybody else in the West Mesa murders.
In 2002, Scott Lee Kimball was released from prison early, having agreed to work for the FBI as an informant. But instead, he went on a killing spree, causing him to wind up back in prison in 2005. So, letting him go as an informant, yeah, it was good job, you dumb fuck.
So there's never a time that you say, okay, I won against Scott Kimball. It's going to be an ongoing investigation with him probably for the rest of my career.
Since then, he's been accused of murdering his former cellmate's girlfriend, as well as a 19-year-old woman. Kimball also reportedly killed his uncle and another woman. He is currently serving a 70-year prison sentence. In 2011, the authorities listed Kimball as a suspect in the West Mesa killings. He allegedly visited the area regularly between 2002 and 2005 for his job, and has a history of violence. However, he denies being the killer, and no direct connections have been made between him and the victims. In 2010, George Walker, a private investigator in the Albuquerque area, began receiving messages from someone claiming to know who the West Mesa Bone Collector is. In fact, the emails and phone messages are suspected to belong to the killer himself. However, law enforcement still hasn't determined who has been leaving the messages, and they aren't sure if the person even knows anything reliable, as none of the information provided has been verified.
He stated, "You know who I am." And I said, bingo.
You know who I am. I know Nina. I know who killed her. I know who killed her, and I know who did it. And I know why. Okay, bye.
In 2007, 2 years before the West Mesa murders were uncovered, an Albuquerque reporter discovered that the city's lone missing persons detective had compiled the names of 16 missing prostitutes between 2001 and 2007. And that many missing prostitutes is usually the first sign of a serial killer. But to police, it seemed like nothing more than just a bunch of missing hookers, people known as the less dead. Eventually, 9 of those women were identified at the West Mesa Boneyard. The whereabouts of the other 7 remain unknown, leaving open the question of whether the killer might have had other burial sites.
Dick, Jessica, investigators who worked the West Mesa site uncovering the remains of 11 women knew that one day they could be digging again for more of the killer's victims.
The similarities are pretty close, so I think any person putting this together would say, yeah, there has to be something more out there.
What is still out on the West Mesa?
and whether he may be out there still, killing. There is the possibility that the serial killer just came and went. Serial killers move, that's why they don't get caught. If he didn't get caught, there are probably more victims out there somewhere. He could be loose in New Mexico or another state. Police in Albuquerque say they are still investigating the West Mesa killings, officially known as the 118th Street homicides.
The killer still has not been found in the West Mesa murders.
New theories are emerging that somewhere out there a second burial site may exist.
However, as there are no known leads at all, the entire case of the West Mesa killings has gone dead cold. The killer may be already dead, or is out there still, free in New Mexico or anywhere in America, living free or continuing his work, with more boneyards located across the country.
Tonight, one group is doing what it says it has to do to try and prevent another West Mesa murder investigation. They're canvassing the city with flyers, warning of a group of men reportedly trying to abduct sex workers from the streets of Albuquerque.
Sleep well. Thanks for watching. Mike out.